So, thank you for listening to The Theory of Creativity. My name is Sarah, and we've got Garrison here
Hey,
and David Schaffner. Hi.
what up?
All right, so David, we're going to be talking about art today. How do you feel about art?
I'm a bit pessimistic about the whole situation of it.
Now, why is that?
It really has to do with I like to think of it like the Emperor's New Clothes type of
Hmm.
mentality or approach to modern art or abstract art.
Okay. So you're like, well, it's kind of a shit show right now, but we'll get there eventually, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of like walking around the Dayton Art Institute. If you go from left to right, you go from beauty and perfection and strive for capturing reality to a giant piece of felt hanging from the fucking wall, or like a blank canvas with colors circling around the edges, supposed to create some sort of optical illusion.
Oh, so you're talking about like the history in museums? Because I think there's a lot of like historical art museums that people are like, well, that shouldn't be hung there, but it's definitely part of histories and culture.
Oh, don't be like that. I mean, yeah, of course. Like if you look at some of the early American artists who didn't have all of that wealth of knowledge and experience that the European artists were working with in like the early 19th century, early 20th century type of thing. That shit's really awful. It is really fucking
Oh
awful.
yeah, like I'm thinking about like the pots and pans and little
Oh yeah,
spoons that they
yeah.
got, all the museums have. But then there's always like those beautiful paintings that there's always one exhibit. It's like some artist that's been doing this for years. And there's like these giant paintings hung up, and then you go into the history part of it, and there's just like pots and pans and spoons and
See the history
felt.
part of, or like, I love how like they were like, no, the paintings are fucking terrible, but look at the furniture. We were word workers. That's what we do. Uh, yeah, no, I mean that part, like it's whatever. But I'm talking more like if you look at the French Impressionists, right? What they were doing, or you go back to like Baroque art, which
Mm-hmm.
is phenomenal. Like the
Mm-hmm.
colors, the lines. I mean, I know it was all idealized and like the sort of like the fashion world today, and actually real,
Mm-hmm.
but they did something that you could look at and really appreciate the artistry in it.
Some of these paintings took years,
Right? Yeah, and I mean,
and
and
they did it from life.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, and to be fair, some of these paintings also involve multiple different people working on different portions of it, so you can't really accredit one artist all of it. But I can respect that more than screen printing colors, so for pop culture images. That I can respect a little bit more.
Okay, so you're talking about like, 19th century early on art compared to like contemporary art, basically.
To a degree, yeah,
And
yeah.
what would you say the major difference is?
I would say it almost feels like a degeneration, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so you mean like people are degenerates
Oh, I
now?
mean that's a bit like okay, that sounds bad. That's not what I'm trying to say, really. Except for it feels like we went from striving for a perfection in art to striving for something new, and you're not really. I don't know.
Like
This is
sensory overload.
yeah, maybe like like Kooning. I don't like I mean he gets a lot of credit for what he did, but I mean it's almost as bad as Jackson Pollock.
Mm-hmm.
And yet people fucking love it. I don't understand it. I mean, maybe I'd put it in my bathroom, like to set up the color arrangement or something.
Buy a print from Kroger.
No, no, I'm saying I'd buy, like, if I had the money, I would buy a Kooning just so I could put it in my bathroom and take a shit in front of it every day. Like, that's, yeah, if I had the money for that, I think that's what it would be. Yeah.
Okay,
I
Garrison, what do
mean,
you feel about
yeah.
art?
I mean, I think we still have those, those very skilled artists and paintings and such, but we also have the new stuff. I mean, it's just change is constant. We have more now,
We do.
but I will say, um, on subject of old art, uh, this is a very poignant topical thing. about the Confederate statue. So
Yeah, let's talk about that.
yeah,
That's an interesting
so
topic.
yeah, should we take down, certain Confederate artworks and statues? I mean,
Well, these are considered monuments, right? So they were put up in a way to help glorify these people that were a part of the Confederacy, right? Now, I think that they should probably be considered part of history. I don't think that they belong on a government land, though.
See, like I think it's a bit of a stretch to call like just talk about like the Ely Monument as being. I mean, okay, to be fair, it is artwork, right? But it doesn't represent artwork. Artwork is something for aesthetic appeal or emotional response.
it's an emotional
This,
response, all right.
I mean, fair enough, yeah. But more so, it's about a commemoration of an individual. Um, and I don't think, right? I don't think that we should eliminate Confederate art or Nazi art or whatever. I know that's not like exactly a popular opinion, but I don't think that we should continue to maintain these monuments to a moment in time which destroyed the foundation of the United States, to where we had um, so many brothers killing each other. I don't think that's something that you want to commemorate. Although you could say that if we take it down, um, are we then just trying to forget
That's yeah.
uh,
Get that.
America's atrocities?
I think it should be put in a museum, not in
Hey,
public eye.
you took that line from Harrison Ford.
Did I?
Yeah,
Harrison
it belongs
Ford.
in.
It belongs in a museum, yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that history should be forgotten because these are important parts of history that people need to learn from. And considering the recent events that have been going on, it's pretty clear that they shouldn't be forgotten. So I think putting them in a museum where they belong is a good place, but that's for private, private publication. It's not for government. It sends a bad message for government buildings to have these monuments outside of their buildings when they don't represent that kind of thought process.
I think that's a nice compromise. Yeah.
I think that probably was part of the plan, but nowhere in the news has it been explicit where they said that these are going to be going in a museum, but a lot of times they plan ahead for these to be put into a museum. I guess somewhere in North Carolina there was a problem a few years back where they had issues, the same exact issues with certain Confederate flags, or, the governor of North Carolina wanted to take the Confederate flag and put it into a museum. She didn't want it to be a part of the state anymore. And they had the same issue with people putting up against it, but she eventually got it into a museum where it belonged, so.
Do you think the response, right, would have been different if they had made a mention that it would go into museum? Do you think these irrational individuals would have really cared? Like, I mean, maybe this is a bit of a generalization I shouldn't make, but I'm going to make it anyway. Like, I don't think these ignorant fucks ever go to a museum, so I don't
think they
that
go to a
would care.
government meeting either.
Yeah, so it's nice that it would make me feel a little bit better if this was really an outcry against the destruction of past art. Like, that would make me feel kind of good. I'd be like, all right, you guys are fucking wrong, but at least you appreciate art. Like, it makes y'all a little better. Not really.
Instead of about the political issues where it's like, this is our leader, this is...
Yeah, it's the David Duke lauding Trump's statement to the press, talking about how what he didn't say said more than what he did, which is incredibly true, but
Yeah, so I think we're getting a little bit off topic about the art thing.
Yeah, right. Let's get back to that.
Yeah, so museums should be able to preserve history because that's where it belongs. Maybe not necessarily art museums, but like what they did with the Holocaust, putting it into a place where it is remembered gracefully and in a way that isn't oppressive or offensive to somebody. Like they have so many Holocaust museums that are not offensive, that give good remembrance to what happened. So I think that's probably the best way to go with that. Um, so where do you think art's going, David?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know if I could really answer that effectively. I mean, um, I don't think anyone really knows where art's going until it gets there. Um, like for example, the fact that Van Gogh wasn't appreciated until like what was it? It was something like within a few months of dying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, or how writers go their entire life without being respected until they're dead. I mean, you don't really know who's gonna find something or what you're gonna find that seems to capture that sort of era's sensibilities.
Okay, so I think we should probably touch on this because I don't think we did. So art is such like a huge, broad term that I think is used for a lot of different things. Music being one of them. Poetry, writing, paintings, drawings. If I'm missing
Animation.
something,
Yeah.
animation. I don't know. What else am I missing? I think I'm missing something.
Um,
No, I never like pretty much anything that involves
Dance,
creative
theater.
expression. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're pretty much like talking a lot about painters and I guess writers right now because David in his background is a writer. You want to talk about a little bit about yourself?
Um,
You
I
went.
don't know if I would call myself a writer. Um, I have written some things that nobody really cares about, but
I'm not a writer, but I've written some things.
yeah, I don't know. I think it's sort of like what Sartre said is that you aren't like really who you are until somebody else recognizes that in you. So an artist or a writer isn't that until they've achieved something with um, the medium that they're trying to express themselves in. So I wouldn't say that, but I do study English literature. I'm probably a better critic than I am a writer. Yeah. Um, which like I like the idea of writing something and expressing an opinion that other people respect and relate to. So
But you went to Wright State and you have your bachelor's now in.
I will have my bachelor's at the end of this next semester.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I had to take a few specific Wright State classes. Well, not specific actually, it was just any fucking Wright State classes. I needed a specific number of hours at Wright State. So
Okay.
I've ended up, I will, by the time I graduate, have 30 plus credit hours that I didn't actually need. So
Okay.
I should have my bachelor's. And I am hoping I will get my master's. Been talking to some of my professors about the graduate program and
Mm-hmm.
TA position, and it seems promising. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, good luck to you.
Thanks.
I'm sure
But
you'll get it.
I try. But yeah,
Okay.
I think one thing when people talk about art, that gets overlooked a lot is art in writing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's understandable because most popular writers that I ever hear about are Stephen King and Edgar Allan Poe, and I don't know if I'd consider their writing to be art.
Well, there's this horror. Horror's got its own art.
Hmm. I suppose. Um.
I mean,
There's
art is subjective. So, I mean, can you really say that just because you don't see it as art, someone else might not think? I mean, someone else might think that it's the most beautiful thing that they've read.
Well, no, I completely agree. I mean, there's plenty of people that I absolutely love, specifically Poe and King, but I guess the reason I never really consider them to be art is more sensationalism, you know. When you look at like even if you look at Edgar Allan Poe talking about his own work when he was actually writing, he didn't consider the stuff that we look at like the Telltale Heart and the Castle of Montillo, sort of however the fuck you say
Mm-hmm.
it. He didn't consider those works to be art. He considered them to be dribble that he was, giving to the public so that he could sustain his alcoholism.
It's a mental state.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so maybe we should
Well-
talk a little bit about like the mentality of artists.
Well, actually, they used to think that comics were just throwaway pieces of kids, entertainment, but over time, they became a beloved, art form. So I think that's a similar thing to what you were saying about pose pose work.
I'm just gonna hold it like that. Yeah, I guess so, but I don't know. But you could consider that, like we were talking about the history of art, looking through a museum and looking at pots, right? I think part of the respect for old comic books and stuff like that is the history that's led up to where the art form looks now. I mean, don't know much about graphic artists. I can't really say too much on it, but that's just the impression that I get. I mean, I feel like you have a better opinion of that, better understanding of all that.
We should have had Blake on this one.
Yeah, Blake's a huge into comics. But
That
I mean,
would've been cool. Is he like in like Michigan now or something?
No,
Last time I
he-
saw a
he-
post, he was like, "It's cold up here."
he travels on the weekends for his job,
Okay.
so that's what he does.
Gotcha.
We had Blake on I think 2 weeks ago for Superpowers, and that was really cool. Awesome conversation we had with him.
We definitely have Blake's awesome. I mean, like all hang out.
Oh, I know. I agree with that one.
Anyway, so okay, but would you consider, right? Like, there's a respect for comic book artists and graffiti artists, but do you think that they would get any recognition in the sort of highbrow artistic community?
Okay, so let's specify what you mean about highbrow artistic community, because I have little to no idea what you're talking about that. Because I think in this day and age, so many really great artists are recognized because of the social aspect that we have now. Now, maybe like 20 years ago, it was a different story. Like Andy Warhol was a household name because so much of his art was highbrow, technically. Like he was commissioned in art galleries for specific reasons. Like there's a different atmosphere now with art than there was 20, 30 years ago.
I would agree with that, definitely, but I would also say that there was a sort of cult of personality surrounding Andy Warhol. I would say more of what made his art was his life. And he became, I think, the quintessential example of what a highbrow artist is supposed to look and act like. And he sort of created our cliche image of the artist, actually.
Yeah, like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is Danny DeVito's. I don't know if you guys saw that episode where Danny DeVito's like an artist and he's like looking at this vacuum or something.
Oh, I think he looked at like an eyeball and then got like sucked into it.
Yes,
and it was like weird looking.
It was
fucking
like,
painting.
look at this piece. This piece is fantastic. Like I can't even imagine, trying to be an artist and being that pretentious. Though we see it every day, older artists becoming more and more pretentious. Anyway, I don't know. So let's talk a little bit about like the mentality of artists, because I think that's an important thing to touch on. Do you guys think that you have to have some sort of mental disorder to be an artist?
No.
Garrison's thinking.
Well, maybe. I think maybe.
As an artist yourself, do you feel like you have to have a mental disorder?
No, but I mean, I feel like I would like to try, maybe, but there's a risk of not coming back from it. Like you may break your brain and then, become like mentally ill, schizophrenic or something. So
Right. Eat lead.
It's
Yeah.
it's a risk, I think. So.
Okay. Okay. Well, don't jump off the deep end for me, Garrison. I still need you around. I don't know. I feel like artists definitely need to be able to express themselves. I think there's not a lot of artists that fully have learned recently to express the capacity of human emotion. That's why there's so many different styles. I think music's probably like one of the only aspects of art that has been able to fully grasp full human emotion. But visual art's a different story for me.
So, like, I'm not really sure where your stance is on that question. So, are you both saying that, like, to a certain extent, you need some sort of mental incapacity in order to be an artist?
Well, I think you have to push yourself beyond your limits, to advance and gain experience and things like that. But if you only work within your comfort zone, sleeping,
Eating.
it's like sleeping 9 hours per day, having 3 meals a day, you're comfortable, you're in your same mind, right?
Mm.
So you're not really, you're comfortable, you're not forced into the wilds, so to speak. You aren't forced to look at things in different ways. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. But I mean, like, okay, the thing that makes art what it is, rather than just being churned out by robots, right, is that each piece of art is expressed by an individual. So, I mean, to say that what's in your head right now isn't good enough to be considered art, and that it needs to be, you need to go beyond what's in your head and try to find the new horizon, so to speak. It just, I don't know. I don't like that idea. I mean, I get where you're coming from. I'm not like completely disagreeing with it. I just don't like the idea that you have to be like mentally unstable in order to create art.
I think
Yeah.
for me, as an artist, it comes from a very deep emotion inside of myself. It may not necessarily be expressed visually, but like whenever I create something, my strive and my passion towards it always comes from wanting to create it for somebody else, not for me, but it's always for somebody else. I think that's probably where I don't know, Garrison. Where does your passion come from? Is it just like the passion to just create?
Well, when I do art, I want to give it, my whole self.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, like, I'm not saying that this works for everyone, but for me, in order to show my true skills, then I would have to put my whole self into it, and that may mean, losing a few hours of sleep, missing a few meals or something like that. So,
Well, Slaughterhouse-Five. Who's the author of Slaughterhouse-Five?
me.
Let's figure that out.
Fuck, I can never fucking remember people's names. But anyway, I was reading something about his writing style, right, back in the day, like how he did things, and he said that he didn't really write because he wanted. Well, no, he didn't really write because he wanted to. He didn't write for other people. He wrote because if he didn't, he felt like Vonnegut. That's right, fucking Vonnegut. Yeah, he wrote because he could like get these ideas, these thoughts out of his head, and in order to like function without these things fucking with him, he just kept writing and writing and writing. Like Philip K. Dick, right? He thought that he was channeling the universe, like that was his sort of motivation. And now both of these writers are phenomenal, and they've done like award-winning stuff. And you could probably put them in like they were definitely a little mentally unstable. But then you could also look at somebody like Whitman, right? Whitman, who I personally feel is like one of the best early American writers to have existed. And I wouldn't, to any degree, say that he was unstable. I think that he embraced life, and I think you can do that, and I think you can draw from life and embrace it without being beyond the limits of your own mind.
Okay.
So like acid, DMT,
Oh,
some weed, maybe.
yeah, well, like, all right, check it out. I always love this idea. Um, mm, 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 mm. Beat poets, Allen Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac. I was having a hard time reaching those names. Allen Ginsberg. Now I think he might have done this a few times with Jack Kerouac, but I know he definitely did this with Neil Cassidy. But like the two of them would drop acid and then sit across from each other, and like they'd like be as completely honest about whatever's coming through their head, like completely open with each other, and just talk back and forth like crazy, right? And so like some of Ginsberg writing like evolved from this. Also like when he went to South America, I can't remember what the drug it was. It's like a specific route that you can't really like transport it because it loses its potency. So you just like gotta go down there and just fucking take it. He said when he took it, it was like looking into the eye of the universe and just falling. To some degree, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but and some of his writing came from that too, and like fascinating stuff. But I don't think that that's necessarily needed. You know, it does create some cool effects, though. I will say that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for listening to our first segment of Art with David Schaffner. So thank you for listening. This is the Theory of Creativity, segment 2 of the Theory of Art with David Schaffner.
Hello.
So I kind of want to lead in with this segment talking about how artists in current times are being kind of exploited. And what are your opinions on this, guys?
You want to lead off, Gareth?
I was gonna
piggyback
piggyback off of you.
I would say that that's not really too big of a difference from the past, really. I mean, if you go back to, before the Renaissance, the only artwork that could exist was stuff made for the church. If you go back to early, Dutch artists, let's not say the only, but most of the artwork was being created as portraits or specifically for people's homes. So really like about creative expression. We all gotta make a living, right?
Yeah. I guess my main concern with it is that a lot of artists these days are pressured into digital or graphic design in order to keep up with how businesses are growing, I guess. That's my main concern. It seems like a lot of artists are pressured into doing work they may not necessarily enjoy in order to make a living. And that's I guess that's just really sad to me.
Yeah.
So the question was how they're being exploited?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I'll twist this into something that I'm familiar with, animation and TV. So usually when a creator pitches an idea to the studio and they accept that, that doesn't mean that they'll automatically have a show. They're pitching the idea, and even if they don't make the show, the creative rights still belong to that network. So the creator can't, go somewhere
to a
else
different network or anything
and pitch that idea. So I kind of feel that the creators are being shafted, things like that. But also something that's happening right now, that's kind of a big deal. How Frank Darabont, who directed some of the earlier seasons of The Walking Dead, he's suing AMC for like $30 million because they've been tight on money and not paying him what he's owed. Yeah, so they're being sued for that. But also, um, Robert Kirkman, the creator of the comic book, he's only paid like 5%, and then some of the uh, the producers are like paid 7, 8, 9, 10%, and same thing goes with manga creators. Like they're paid like nothing, and it's basically
Their stories.
their story, their characters. So a lot of places artists are getting shafted when I think that they should be getting more.
Maybe that comes down to how well the producers and the creators come up with their contracts. I don't know. I guess it would be hard for me to decide how that's placed. Because as like a business owner, I would be like, well, you can get like 3%, But I don't know. But we make our own content. That's different, We don't hire somebody else to make our content for us. So,
Although to be fair, they are kind of widening the audience, the viewership of some of these properties.
mm-hmm.
So maybe that's an argument could be made. That's why they're paid more.
Right. It's more accessible.
Right.
Both of you talking about negotiation of contracts and stuff. How do you know what you're really worth as an artist?
That's a good question. I don't know. My dad always like pushed this on me. Like, the way he put it was, how much are you worth an hour? And for me, I'm worth like a $50 million an hour, but that to somebody else, it may not be the same.
Yeah, yeah. I really like, I think a lot of times, what was it? Cooley, the Looking Glass self, said that we determine ourselves and our worth from the perspective of others.
Mm-hmm.
To a certain degree, I think people would argue with that idea, but yeah, to a certain degree. So if somebody says they're going to give you this amount of money, like, I don't know, as like personally, right? How much I'd be willing to like fight with them on it, I mean, because
like, what would you charge for, I don't know, like a page of poetry?
actually, I think they've had, there was one poem I had to read for one of my classes, right? And it turns out they were giving him like, it was like $10 a page. So
that's actually quite a bit.
Yeah, no, it's pretty decent. So the dude ended up writing like 25 pages.
Okay.
It was a little ridiculous, actually. The poem itself was a little ridiculous, but yeah, you end up making a pretty decent amount of money off of it. So
yeah, $250.
Right?
I mean, I'd definitely write 200 or 25 pages for $250. I've done like full on scale paintings for little to nothing, and I guess it's more about my passion for it. I don't know. It's about what you place your passions and how much you price them at.
Well, plus I think you can ask for more once more people know your name.
Yeah, I'll say that's true. I don't know. I work with a coworker, where like my actual day job, and like I told him about this opportunity where he was able to paint some guy's dog's Doberman with a suit on it, and he said like the guy that was inquiring about it was asking, like I'll probably pay like $250 for a painting of my Doberman with a suit on, and I gave this my coworker the option to do so, and he's like, no, that's like nothing to me. And I was like, okay, to me that says like you're not really in it for the passion of painting, you're more in for the money. And I don't know, that kind of gave me a sour taste in my mouth.
But don't we all do what we do for the money?
I mean, it's nice. I'll say that.
I mean, maybe that's a bit mercenary, but we all gotta pay the mortgage, right?
Sure, but I mean, if you were able to do a painting of somebody's Doberman with a suit on, wouldn't you?
Good
I
point.
think if I was capable, I might. Yeah, that'd be kind of funny. I'd enjoy looking at that. But you wouldn't look at it anymore, though. You know what I'm saying? You're selling it to somebody else. Um, and I guess it would also depend on whether you really found the idea of painting a Doberman with a suit even remotely interesting. Because, I mean, what if you thought about it like this, right? He thought about this painting as, I don't know, something he didn't really want to do, right? And the amount of time it was going to take for him to do it well, right? Every artist wants to put out something that they have like a pride in, right? Well, if he doesn't enjoy doing this at all, then every hour he spends on this painting is rather than an enjoyment or a pleasure um is a stressor. You know, it's something you don't want to do. You just like hate trying to get at it.
You're talking about whale speed.
So I would say, yeah, maybe like if you don't want to do it, you would definitely want more money for it.
I mean, I guess that's a good point. Um, I don't know. Uh, it's hard for me to say because I like drawing, so that's just me. But because he's a different person, different personalities. Um, so is there anything else you want to talk about in the art world?
In the art world, not particularly, I suppose.
Long pause.
Hmm?
Long pause.
Yeah, there was a long pause. I'm not
Mhm.
really sure. Like it's a kind of broad kind of thing to ask, I guess. Um, do you think what you do is create art?
Yes.
Hmm. Do you think what um illustrators for children's books do is create art?
Absolutely.
Do you think a urinal on the wall in a museum is art?
I think what's in it could be considered art.
Hmm. I think the artist that presented a urinal, just a clean, empty urinal, would disagree with you. Was one of the first um, Dada installations. Was
Hmm.
just a urinal in an art museum, kind of like push the movement forward. People like flipped out about this fucking urinal.
Well, I mean, if you walked in and saw that, what would your first initial thought be? Be like, well, this whole, I guess, shows a pisser? I don't know.
I don't know. I kind of thought it was kind of a joke, you know. But I also think like the reason that Bukowski would get like ragingly drunk for his readings is that he thought his poetry was a joke. You know, he had no respect for his audience, but he had no respect for his audience because they appreciated his art, which is a bit contradictory, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of backwards.
Yeah, well, you know, he didn't think he was really creating much of anything, but he was like,
Mhm.
"Fuck it, if people want to pay me for this, might as well do it."
Mhm. Kind of nihilistic, I guess.
Love it.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, I do. So I mean, I would say art is whatever anybody else says it is. I don't know what art is. I can't even begin to narrow that down. Art is one of those words like love, has no specific meaning until you see it and feel it, and then you're like, yes, there it is.
Yep, I think that's a good ending to our art discussion here. Thank you, David. Have a
Thank
good
you
day.
for having me.